You're listening to the I Love You Keep Going podcast with George Haas. For more information, please visit our website at www.mettagroup.org. That's www.mettagroup.org.
So welcome everybody. This is I Love You Keep Going. It is Thursday, August 28th, 2025. It's 7:37 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And one of the questions that comes up quite a bit is there any relationship between attachment conditioning and what happens in spiritual practice? And how does that affect different relationships with communities and also with teachers? And like all things, because attachment conditioning is essentially the platform from which everything is constructed, you could make a case that the dynamic within the community and the dynamic in the relationship to the teacher is all a reflection of what the underlying attachment conditioning is. You might even make a case for who moves toward the front of the room and wants to be in the role of the teacher, and who stays in the back of the room and likes to be attached to a teacher but not take on that responsibility. And you might even make the case that this is a cynical telling, or maybe just personally informed from my own experience. I'm going to mute everybody. I'm hearing some feedback. In a caricature type way of thinking about it, you might say that dismissing people like to be at the front of the room. So they like the adulation of being in the teacher role, and then the way that that sort of plays out, the people that are drawn to a dismissing figure in the front of the room would be preoccupied people. Do we think that people that are well-adjusted, that have secure attachment, that are engaged in the pursuit of life as it's laid out in front of them, are the ones that come for meditation practice, or is it people that don't fit in so well, that have more of a drive toward the meditation world? Now, if you lived in Myanmar or somewhere in Asia where for millennia the instruction around this was central to the culture, you would think that then the mainstream of society would be motivated toward that. Much like in the Judeo-Christian world, you're drawn toward the spiritual practices that are central to the community that you grow up in. In the West, of course, this is Christianity or Judaism or Islam. So I say that mainly because during the Middle Ages with the Holy Wars, there was a big mix in Europe of the different faiths with various times Islam coming up into Europe. So that's been that millennia-long debate. We don't seem to pay so much attention to the series of culturally relevant religious philosophies, let's call them, that preceded the current set that we have. But if you grew up in a largely Christian or Judaic, Islamic grouping, and suddenly you're pivoting toward something that's completely different than that, we would want to question what was the motivation for that. We also have a whole structure that's getting even close to 2 centuries old of Western psychology as a way of addressing the discontent. Uh, and I find a lot of the people that turn toward meditation are looking for something that would be helpful to them that they weren't able to find in Western mental health practices. And then we have the way in which that appeared to us culturally. If you look at the United States for as an example, what you're looking at is a society where teachers who have made a significant impression on us really came over in the 50s, the 1950s, so not even 100 years ago. Suzuki Roshi in San Francisco in the Bay Area being a prominent one. And then Maharishi was very popular in the 60s. The Beatles, of course, helped with that in terms of promoting it. The first wave of psychedelia was there as well. If you dump that into the conversation about the way that resources are distributed along the class system in our culture, particularly after the Second World War, when the development of these standardized tests came along, and depending on how well you were able to do on these standardized tests, opened the door to a lot of resources for your education. And if you didn't test well, closed the door on a lot of the resources that you would have. And completely, in my my way of thinking, arbitrary to favor people who test well over people who don't test well as a way of resources for education. Because there's such a diversity in the way that people think and are able to comprehend information, and also what to do with that might be of benefit to us rather than this very narrow funneling of a certain type of thinking being rewarded and other types of thinking being excluded. I think in some sense it became a way of reinforcing our invisible class system. It's invisible from conversation because it's not allowed, but it's evident everywhere else. So all of that creates this pressure that pushes people outside of the membership into what is mainstream culture, the big picture of culture. And so, but that doesn't exclude these smaller societies, the smaller subcultures from developing. And that really is, at least in my experience of where the movement toward meditating came from. In the United States, of course, we have a culture of it's I had surgery a few weeks ago, and and I had general anesthesia, and it's created a kind of brain fog, which is an amazing thing to be sitting in because I have literally said the word that I'm trying to say now thousands of times, and it just arrived, appropriation. Uh, we have a culture of appropriation without attribution. I don't think we can get rid of that as a feature of our culture because we would have nothing left. We take whatever looks shiny and pretty from whatever cultural group it arrives in. We dissociate it from the structures that it comes in. That you might say we throw out the packaging. And then we just have the object. And how that works in the meditation community, of course, is people grab techniques that they like, that make sense to them, but they pull them out of the Dharma map that they came in. And you do a succession of these different techniques in a kind of mishmash of Theravada, Zen, and Tibetan practices. Maybe throw in some Kabbalah, some contemplative prayer, and you mash up these sort of spiritual concoctions that don't actually lead anywhere. One of the things you know about meditation is that you have the insights that the meditation technique offers you. And when you don't have a sense of the arc of the development of the insight into enlightenment, the mixing and matching of the different traditions and the different techniques produce a series of insights that may or may not lead anywhere. And so it isn't that sudden awakening that you see that this is the path to enlightenment, which is what is talked about in each of those lineages. This is the Theravada path. This is the Zen path. This is the Tibetan path. And we like to secularize things, in our culture, so we strip it all down to mindfulness. And that really is a dissociated collection of practices, which becomes actually a stabilizer for the values of our conventional culture, but not necessarily something that would lead to insight. Stress reducer and makes you feel good. Also, the United States, of course, is this place where we've been inventing religious sects since the very beginning, since the Pilgrims, a religious sect came over. The two groups, the religious excluded from Europe, and the conquerors who wanted to enrich themselves. And that devaluing process, the civilizations that were here when we arrived had this rich history of art and culture and symbolism. And at the peak of it, of course, it was made in a way that was quite precious, which was of no value to the marauders that came over. Said they just simply melted it down and shipped it back as the material it was. And so we have lost in so much of that understanding that was here, and so devalued. You're on the losing side of a genocide, and you're just devalued, and everything that your culture represented is devalued to the point of no interest at all. So we don't know that. So still, I would say that the majority of people who come to practice meditation and have a sense of wanting to find something that's deeply meaningful to replace the alienation that they feel to the central culture, does so because of their inability to relate to the central culture. And we could look at that as an expression of the loss of epistemic trust. So epistemic trust is where you believe that people are telling you the truth, and you believe that the reason that they're telling you what they're telling you is that they're meaning to be helpful to you. And what do we mean by that? They're meaning to be helpful to you. The point of it is to help you discover the things that are meaningful to you, that will matter to you, that will give you a sense of purpose in life, a sense of direction in life. If you look at the arc of attachment conditioning in the development of epistemic trust and the loss of epistemic trust, you see in early childhood that the child attaches to the caregiver and forms a bond with them. And in the way that the caregiver interacts with the child develops a working model of themselves, and they develop a working model of the world being other people. But children, the brains of children are these wild warrens of disconnected axons, which are meant to be able to sop up an amazing amount of information really fast about the world. But it makes for very poor cognitive thinking. And so you move through early childhood where you form that working model of self and working model of the world and how that works. That's the early crucible of attachment conditioning. If your caregiver comes good enough, they recognize you, they empathetically connect to you, they help you regulate your emotions, they attune to what's interesting to you, and they support and encourage you in discovering that. Then you have a sense of epistemic trust. They are telling you the truth, and what they're telling you is meant to be helpful to you. They're reliable to you. You can use them to develop a sense of yourself in the world. And if they don't come reliably, and they don't offer that to you, uh, your perspective changes. And because children grow at an astonishing rate through that early period and throughout childhood, what we are also doing is growing a brain that matches that. It's not so easy to shake conditioning because we've grown a brain that matches our experience. And humans are one of the few creatures whose brain develops uh, outside of the womb, engaged directly with the environment. We're born with a brainstem that's pretty well formed, a partially developed right brain and not much of a left brain. And all of those structures develop in direct interaction with the environment. So if if you're neglected in childhood and who you are isn't important, uh, if your caregivers are present but not engaged with you, you develop a brain that suppresses the arousing aspect of the um, hmm. I'm also dyslexic, so I can see the word in my mind, but I can't pronounce it. Amygdala. That's transmitted to the hippocampus, which is in back, and there's a hyperactivation of that. If you talk about it in terms of systems, in somebody who's avoidant, you suppress the sympathetic nervous system and you hyperactivate the parasympathetic nervous system, which then enables you to shut down the emotional system as well. That's the conditioning. It's the opposite if you end up preoccupied. So in a preoccupied person, somebody comes and takes care of you and helps you emotionally regulate enough that you reorient toward them as your emotional regulator. Dismissing people are simply auto-regulating. They never really turn to somebody else for help. That inconsistent care, sometimes you get it and sometimes you don't, and there's no real good explanation for why that would be. Um, I've just figured out that if you hold your hand up like this, the system will raise the hand for you. What's it coming to? Soon we'll just have to sit here and emojis will arise and people will know what we're doing. Uh, in that inconsistency, what happens is you remain oriented toward the regulator. Dismissing people are really good at exploring. Off they go. They don't come back. They don't share what they found out. What matters to them, they tend to keep really private. Uh, Preoccupied people, on the other hand, don't learn to explore because they need to stay proximate to their caregiver who regulates them. If they were to separate to go and attempt to explore, they would be dysregulated and not be able to regulate themselves. This is the dilemma. Then we have the trauma line fall down. If the caregivers either don't pay enough attention to the kids, that people outside of the family can harm the children, or the caregivers themselves are the ones who harm the kids. The attachment system is in some ways shattered, you might say, or becomes very complex, becomes disorganized. When I first came to retreats in Southern California, uh, how long ago would that be? 35 years ago or 30 years ago. We used to have to sign a form that said um, we did not have mental health issues, which I would say was the driving force of disorganized people coming toward an alternative way of addressing what was going on with them. And because they were disorganized and all over the place and hard to manage, uh, and easily overwhelm the people who were operating the retreats. So that if you had, there was always some form. Are you now, or have you ever been mentally ill? If so, you can't come on our retreat. Yes or no. Which would you, which little box would you check? No. uh, when you used to fly from the United States to Europe, when you entered, this is all the way through the early 80s, even, so not so far ago, so not so long ago. All of the immigration forms would say, are you now, or have you ever been a homosexual? And we would all gleefully check no and laugh. uh, what do you do when the whole system doesn't work for you, and you're lost and you need to find a place to go that can make sense of it for you? So I think that that's at least was my earliest experience of the meditation world. That's who was coming. Uh, and one of the things about disorganized people, of course, they mentalize poorly, and meditation, particularly in the Vipassana Theravada strand of meditation, really good at developing mentalizing skills. So you could make these fantastic leaps forward doing the meditation strategies that then uh, gave you a deeper insight into the nature of things. But still, it appeared that the the disorganized, I harp on the disorganized, the status of disorganized people, because that was the state I found myself in, uh, um, not doing so well. Uh, and the cool, calm, and collected teachers in the front of the room, not always, but often. And this longing, I remember finding Shinzen and really having this strong desire to be somebody that he liked. And I had an experience with him that I don't know, maybe half a dozen people over the years sitting with him shared with him is that on the last day of the retreat, as I was walking down the hall, he popped out of the doorway and he said, "Oh, I'm so glad that I found you. I have this really important thing that I need you to do for me. Come along." And I thought, oh my God, finally he sees me. He recognizes my worth. And we go into his room and he points at his suitcase and said, "Would you take that to the car?" Uh, which I did. Uh, Funny, huh? What this idea I had, this projection of my need to him and the way that he managed that. I had myself have this insanely high bar of the minimum level of kindness that you need to express toward me for me to be able to take you on as a teacher, and it's unusual to find that. And it was the thing about Shinzen that drew me to him initially was that he was unfailingly kind, which is something I needed because of my early experience was one of such cruelty. And so we're also coming toward people and listening to the way that they describe the world uh, and looking for somebody who describes it in a way that we recognize so we don't have to do a lot of transliteration in order to understand what they're telling us. And this is also, I think, one of the things that happens when you find somebody who you can establish epistemic trust, that you can believe them and you can believe that they have your interest in mind. And then they talk about the world in a way that you can relate to the experience of the world. And I think that that's one of the reasons why we have so many different voices, and also the different traditions can be of such value as you move into the description of it. The I, of course, am a smartass, and so I need to express all of this stuff in a way. So I asked Shinzen about the disclaimer for the mentally ill that was in his release. And he explained it to me as you have to have a self before you can have a no self. You have to have a strong sense of self before you can deconstruct it. I completely disagree with that. But I, I appreciated that it was based on some consideration. The and the Theravada focuses so much on that no self experience, that uh, seeing through the ephemeral nature of the self experiences. You hear me talk about that quite a bit, that the self experience is the witness to the actual self and what the self is doing, that the body mind activity of you is fully unconscious, and all of that conditioning and all of the decision making and all of the defining and meaning assigning comes through that process. And then uh, it's like the self is the printer in the vast computer system, and you get a bulletin about what the body mind is about to do in case it's a really bad idea and you need to veto it. But there's no decision making in that process. It's simply, this is a bad idea, don't do it. It's what that witnessing function is. And it also works as a way of ordering experience so that you can present it to someone else in a way so that you actually can have a dialogue with somebody, a collaborative dialogue with somebody where they understand you and you understand them, and you have that mentalizing model. You understand the meaning that you give to your experience of the present moment. You understand that it's your meaning and your experience. You understand what about that you would like to share or express to somebody else. You understand how to express it to them so that they understand you. If you define everything with definitions that are yours, and everybody else is doing the same thing, then they're defining everything with their definitions. How do you bridge that gap of meaning between what you mean and what they mean? That's that process. So you make an expression and make sure that they understand what you mean, and then they respond to you, and you make sure that you understand what their response is, and then you can uh, adequately modify your understanding of the experience between you. And if you can't do that, it's very easy to get into conflicts that are really arising because you can't see each other clearly. Is that making sense? What did you come to practice for? What was it that you wanted? I remember when I moved to LA in 92 and I went to sit with somebody in Venice. Uh, and and I took an intro to meditation class. Um, and the teacher said, "Why did you come to meditation?" And in that, I grew up in Chicago, so I like to say in that Midwest eagerness that we have out there, but not here. I said, I want to be enlightened. And uh, there was just a guffaw from the other students, but it wasn't kind. It was, you idiot, like that's something that you can get from this practice. Uh, and I thought, why would you do this if you couldn't get enlightened? That makes no sense. 10 lifetimes from now, 10 incarnations from now. No. I want enlightenment in this incarnation. It's one of the things that also drew me to Shinzen, which was his claim that we could get stream entry in this lifetime. Um, but my mind was very scattered in the beginning, not much concentration. Couldn't hold an object at all. Uh, so what was that like for you when you came? Shinzen used to say, enlightenment is much, much better than anything you could ever imagine, and not nearly as good as what you did. And so when I think of those, 30 or so years ago, uh, I wanted to be enlightened, and I had a strong sense of what enlightenment would be, which would, which was succinctly, I'll never have another problem. And somehow I will magically transform my ability to respond to the things of the world, and that there will be no problems left. This, however, did not turn out to be related to enlightenment, but to magic. It tends to be more related to old age, sickness, and death, which you learn gradually, which I think is a good thing if you live long enough. How do you accustom to it? My I lived through the uh, AIDS crisis in New York in the 80s, And my friend Kenny O'Brien, who died, I guess, 91 or so. Um, used to say, I'm totally fine with this except for one thing. And I said, what's that? Worrying about what's going to go next in terms of his ability to function in the world. The worry about what's going to go next, which is kind of I like to call the joy of aging. What's going to go next? How do you sit with that and be at peace and carry on with the things that matter? And as your energy changes and as you're able to do less, you pull up the bottom of the list of things that are less important so that you can focus your energy on the things that matter to you. But if you don't figure out what that is, you could spend the energy on things that don't matter to you, and it creates a sense of despair, being alive. You have attachment conditioning, and you can work on that attachment conditioning if it's in the insecure, disorganized category to make it more uh, functional, more secure. We call it earned secure. And then that can make relationships work much better. You don't get into the patterns of transactional relationships or the patterns of trauma bonded relationships. You're actually able to be in a collaborative relationship. And in a collaborative relationship, if you pull the anxiety of abandonment below the threshold for authentic expression, you can relate the things that are authentically important to you, and then use this practice actually to move into a place of a deep and profound insight into the nature of what's meaningful to you. And you can reorganize your life in such a way that that's the thing that you spend, um, I like to say, the best part of each day doing, and then do the secondary exploration stuff in what's left of the day after that pursuit of meaning is there, and that you're able to put around yourself a group of people that are interested in that and delighted by your succeeding in the discoveries of what matters to you, and want you to regale them with the insights that you've discovered about it. In exchange, they regale you with the things that they've understood. But if you find somebody who's relatable to you in a way, you can use that also in your own exploration, and there's a synergy that happens. Is that all making sense? And not get stuck in a rigid teacher-student relationship that simply reinforces uh, a native, an unfortunate native attachment conditioning, which I think happens quite a bit. Christian.
You know that I imagine it's a koan, not some new age wisdom. That like phrase that if you ever meet the Buddha on the road, you should kill him.
It's a Zen story.
Yeah. I always thought that it was kind of funny that with the the Buddha Bamiyan, the statue in Afghanistan.
The one they blew up? What?
Yeah, it was only the Taliban that could actually that could actually do that.
This is the uh, iconic aniconic debate about the representation of uh, the idea of spiritual teachers, I guess. Uh, Fundamentalism versus something dynamic. I tend to be more on the side of freedom than on the side of confinement.
Sure. Maybe I was being cute, but it's interesting to me that um I wonder if like that's the hardest thing to do for people that are actually practicing Buddhists,
Which,
to like to kill the Buddha and whatever that might
oh,
mean, or to not, to like let go of their teachers and their idea of their teachers and whatever that
their
might.
idea of what enlightenment is.
Right.
The,
Maybe
the,
they need Taliban to do it for.
the Taliban of the mind. Actually, I'm not sure you do need that. What you need to is to pay attention, uh, because uh, you can eventually see what it is, and in the contrast of what you thought it might be, it can even help with that. Uh, Let go of what you wanted it to be, and replace it with what is it. What is it? Maybe simply you're going to get old, you're going to get sick, and you're going to die, and there's nothing you can do about that. And in the meantime, take care of everybody. Mudit?
Hey, George.
Hey,
Um, yeah, the idea of not of imagine two different friends having two different viewpoints. The shift, how did that shift happen in terms of not associating the beingness with somebody's viewpoints? You know, how we see another person as their viewpoint, not separate from their viewpoint. That causes so much conflict. I also find that very hard. So imagine if somebody close to me or some good friend of mine who has opposing beliefs, that it's hard for me to separate my conflict, or to tell myself, oh, that's just a viewpoint that he's having. That's not his beingness.
and then do you make a distinction between viewpoint and action in the world?
Could you elaborate?
Well, it's one thing to have a opposing viewpoint, or a different viewpoint, and it's another to insist that uh, you adopt my point of view. And then if you are unwilling to adopt my point of view, that I put in place physical structures that will compel you to adopt my point of view.
Right. Oh, I see. No, it's just the sense of closeness tends to get disturbed if somebody has opposing viewpoints. And I was wondering
So,
why that is.
well, this is then the question of safety, really, in the abandonment sense. Uh, does somebody express to you a variation in a point of view or a different point of view, uh, that is done in such a way that it doesn't make you frightened for uh, whether or not they will then be reliable in taking care of you? If you get to a place where the way in which they express the point of view suggests that they will not be reliable in taking care of you, then the, the there's no way to settle that, right? That's what I would think, because as you may know, notice that everybody's point of view changes. Uh, you look at the flexibility of somebody's thinking. If you have somebody who's very open and constantly looking for information and constantly doing their evaluations, their point of view is changing all of the time. It's when they get quite rigid and deflecting of any contrary information, making a judgment, and then that becomes it. There was an interesting study about the distance of neuronal tubes in the prefrontal cortex. The 5 layers of the prefrontal cortex are connected by neuronal tubes. That information flows between the layers. And I'm simplifying, so if you're a brain scientist, please don't send me an email, or do. I don't care. That at one end of the distance between the neuronal tubes is autism, and at the other end of the bell curve is dyslexia. And when you get toward the end where the neuronal tubes are really packed together, they become very concrete and they're thinking, and very inflexible in their thinking. And then at the other end of the curve, dyslexic people are the most rangy and dynamic in the way that they think, because the length of the axons that connect the neuronal tubes is so leggy that it tends to connect to a wider range of subjects and ideas. And the closer they are together, the less range there is, and the more concrete it becomes. So part of it is also beyond simply conditioning, but the actual hard, the actual wetware of the person. And so as you're mentalizing the nature of the conversation with them, are they really concrete in pretty much everything? Are they quite rangy? Can you expect them to adopt totally different ideas and jam them all together? It's that great insult for the concrete thinkers of a flip-flopper. They keep changing their mind, whereas you have to make a decision. You have to come to an idea, or on the other end, the constant change and fluctuation. So where are you in that, and what is a good amount of flow in that? But the thing that undermines the safety is the sense that that if you don't adopt their point of view, that there'll be a loss of care, loss of attention. You'll be abandoned.
This is a silly example for in this case, like you're talking about Shinzen.
Yeah.
Like imagine if somebody comes and talks against Shinzen to you, of like Shinzen is this, or just opposing somebody that you care about very much. And I realized that situations there is I'm not sure if it's abandonment, but there is this internal hurt or fear that tends to.
That also, I think, is nuanced. If I thought that I had been bamboozled, it would be quite problematic, right? I thought I had been lied to, or that they had misrepresented something, manipulated me for something that they wanted. That would be quite troubling. I've never had that experience with Shinzen. He's always been totally straightforward, easy, quirky, and so I don't know that unless I was frightened for him for some reason in the way that they addressed it, that it would be difficult to hear.
And by difficult to hear, you mean, is there fear, or is that just simply an internal disturbance?
Well, I would know that everybody's experience of Shinzen is from their perspective, and they each have a relationship to them. And, teachers are these massive projection objects. Everybody just dumps all of their projections on them. And so what also is fascinating in descriptions of the failures of teachers is the catalog of projections that somebody is actually telling you, which is about them, not about
Mm-hmm.
the teacher. So um, I don't know that that is so much, but I do feel it more on the side of having been fooled, and that makes me frightened. That has a way of undermining my confidence in my own ability to discern reality, which is a frightening place.
Yes, absolutely, exactly.
Yeah, which happens. But, one of the things about going really slowly into relationships and knowing people over a year or two before you make really substantial commitments to them is that also doesn't happen very often. It's only when you rush in because the love bombing is so beautiful. And then Toto runs across the room and pulls the curtain back. So everybody's okay. Did you want to do some practice? A little bit of love and kindness, maybe, or a quick IPF or some Vipassana? Which would you like?
Not IPF because I have to head out.
Okay. If you can't have it, nobody else can.
Yeah.
Which one? All right. I'm going to decide for myself and do metta. Okay, let go of the meditation. How's that? Good. So on September 13th, I'm starting a meditation and attachment level 1 Saturday mornings from 9 to 1. The 13th, the 20th, and the 27th. On September 15th, I'm starting a level 2 meditation and addiction, which is Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 6 to 7. And that runs for 12 weeks. I'm going to do a meditation and attachment workshop. We like to also call it How to Date Like a Secure Person, Even If You're Not. So an hour of dating tips if you need them. What else are we going to do? On October 21st, we're going to start a meditation and attachment level 2 on Tuesday afternoons from 4:30 to 6:30. Don't forget that we have Kaleidoscope, which is a meeting of just the General Sangha. We usually have a period of Q&A about your practice, and you can come with any practice questions. And then I always have some topic to talk about. And then in November, because the holiday season is upon us, I'm going to do this one half-day retreat that we do every year on the 15th of November, which I like to call family archaeology, which is how to use your trip home as a way of investigating your early attachment conditioning. if you're unclear how you actually are operating attachment-wise, all you have to do is go home and watch how everybody else is doing it. It's often more apparent in other people than it is in yourself. And you get a sense of how your family system operates. And then we're already at the end of the year, amazingly. So I'm doing a dating workshop on the 19th of December, but it's quite a ways away. Anyway, take a look at it. It's up on the website. I offer the teaching freely, but I do hope if you're resourced and you can make a donation, you will. There's a link on the website. It helps support me and also the work that Mettagroup does. Thanks so much for your practice. Really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you soon somewhere along the path. Bye.
Thank you for teaching, George. It's good to see you again.
Good.